Well, welcome back after the short coffee break. Hopefully you're all revitalized with a cup of tea and cup of coffee in your hand. I know I am, so that's good for me. We've got up now one of our sponsors, which is ujet.cx. And on the agenda, we had Baker Johnson, Chief Marketing Officer. Unfortunately, Baker can't quite connect and be with us right now, but Ash, who was on part of the panel session earlier, is manfully stepping in. I'm sure he'll do a brilliant job. The first part of this presentation will actually feature a video. So we're going to play the video, and then myself and Ash will have a conversation about it. But please do pop your questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll also have a dialogue with those questions as well if you've got some. So let's roll the video then.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Hi, and welcome to the International Customer Experience Summit. My name is Baker Johnson, and I'm thrilled for the opportunity to speak with you today on behalf of UJET about the changing landscape of customer experience and how we can all work towards delivering the types of experiences that we would want as customers. But I think we all know that's a little easier said than done. Because if we look at the status quo today, we can see that customer service is still really overwhelmingly painful for everyone involved, our customers and our agents. And there's a lot of feel-good marketing out there about omnichannel, customer centricity, and personalization. But if we just step back and think about our own personal experiences dealing with customer service and IBRs in our own lives as customers, it's clear that something has to change. And this may be a bit controversial, but what I'll propose to you today is that it's the big omni-channel contact center vendors that have failed us. And not only that, but that they've done so knowingly. They've flooded the market with bad advice that lives down to the capabilities of their outdated solutions, rather than up to our potential as customer experience leaders who want nothing more than to do the right thing for our customers and the brands we represent in serving them. So let's get started. So I'd like to start with a vision for each of you. And as much as I'd like to take credit for this, I can't. This is Dr. Srikumar Rao, founder of the Rao Institute for Personal Mastery and Extraordinary Impact. Dr. Rao has also authored several books on finding happiness and personal fulfillment in the workplace. And he also delivered my favorite and most highly recommended TED Talk, Plug into Your Hardwired Happiness. And in that talk, he began with a vision for each of us, that as we wake each morning, our blood would sing out in joy at the thought of being who we are and of the purpose we fulfill through our work, that we would literally drop to our knees multiple times throughout the day in gratitude for our great fortune and become radiantly alive. And if our lives do not look like this, then we're wasting them. I absolutely love this vision, but I'm also afraid that for far too many of us in CX and customer service, we're not living this vision. In fact, most of the CX leaders we speak with never even planned on a career in CX in the first place, right? The most common story we hear is about someone who started out as an agent because it was the only job they could get. Maybe they needed the night shift because they were working through school. And the next thing you know, it's 20 years later and they're still there running the whole show. And historically, it's been kind of this thankless job where everything's about the bottom line and we don't have enough resources, and all we deal with all day long are escalations and angry customers. And so instead of that wonderful vision, this is the reality we're experiencing. Over $100 billion in lost business annually, perpetual agent turnover, burnout and exhaustion for some of the kindest and most well-meaning people in our companies, the ones who got to where they are because they truly care for people and want to do the right thing for customers and the business. This is the status quo for contact centers right now. It's the elephant in the room. There's so much hype around the buzzwords, omnichannel, AI, customer centricity, customer experience. So why isn't it working? Why do we have to keep talking about it? We all have so many good, smart people out there on the front lines, and this all seems pretty straightforward, right? So why are we stuck when it comes to solving these challenges? Well, it's a few things, but overwhelmingly what we see is that whether we're talking about data and reporting or channels or new tools and process, we just keep adding. And we've created this complexity that the contact center now has to manage and our customers have to navigate. So let's take a look at how we got here and what's fundamentally broken across our people, process, and technologies so we can start to put together a plan to move forward. So how do we get here? Well, until about 20 years ago, we were really just voice-only call centers, right? Then the first generation of cloud contact centers showed up. They took the old on-premise call center software, they put it in their own data centers, and this was a huge evolution at the time. Not only did it allow us to virtualize the call centers, but new features and capabilities could be delivered much more rapidly. And at the same time, we started to see the rise of new digital channels like email, chat, and SMS. And that's how we became multi-channel contact centers, where we supported multiple channels, but they were still separate and disconnected for our customers and agents. Then around 2013, we saw a huge push towards public cloud infrastructure, and particularly Amazon Web Services at that time. So a second generation of cloud native vendors arose. And that started to offer us more reliable service, better resiliency, fewer outages, and also more flexible pricing models to support seasonality and usage. And these newer vendors also started promoting something they called omnichannel to differentiate themselves from the more established first-gen multi-channel providers. And the promise of omnichannel was that we would offer customers the ability to fluidly pivot between channels without loss of context for frictionless customer experiences. And that's really where we still are today. Virtually all first and second gen contact center providers claim to be omnichannel. And many have also acquired or added on AI point solutions as well. So omnichannel and AI are the keys to success, or at least that's what we've been told. But with everyone talking about AI and omnichannel and personalized CX, you have to ask yourself, why are our brand experiences still so fragmented, unintelligent, and robotic? And the answer is actually really simple. In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone. 1 year later, they launched the App Store with 500 apps, sparking a social and economic phenomenon that would change everything about how we interact with friends and family. So here we are, 14 years later. That's an absolute eternity in terms of technology adoption and innovation. More than 80% of all consumers today, regardless of generation, have a smartphone. Consumer mobile usage averages 5 hours per day, and app purchases have passed $100 billion annually. Mobile is not yet another channel to add to your digital stack. It's a single modality that consolidates the entire stack into the palm of your customer's hand. It's simple, intuitive, and overwhelmingly preferred by consumers. And it can offer the contact center metadata and context we could only dream of 5 to 10 years ago. So why are we still treating it like a landline phone? And why are our customers still stuck switching channels and starting over and re-authenticating and repeating themselves and spelling things? Every one of us here today is a consumer, right? So just in my own personal life, I've got 3 little boys. So we're a family of 5. We travel. We're constantly buying and replacing electronics. We deal with insurance and our banks. And honestly, I can count on one hand the number of everyday brands that we deal with that have truly adapted their contact centers to provide better service for me as essentially a 100% mobile user. We haven't had a landline phone for years. And while I do initiate some interactions from the desktop, 9 times out of 10, it's through my smartphone, on the couch, on the go, whenever I can squeeze it in while doing something else. And it's not just me, it's all of us. And it's really not up for debate at this point. So what do I mean when I say that brands haven't adapted? Well, like most consumers, and like most of you, I'm going to do everything I can via the app or mobile web before I call in. The only exception there is really if I'm driving around and I need to be hands-free. And I always use the example of airline apps because we travel so frequently, but it could be almost any large brand you deal with frequently. Retail, utilities, tech support, delivery services. So most big brands either already have or are now investing heavily in their apps and mobile web, especially on the sales and marketing side of the business. And overall, we're doing a pretty good job investing in knowledge management for self-service on the support side. But if I can't figure it out myself, I hit that button of last resort, contact us. And what happens? I'm kicked out of the app into Dante's Inferno, the IVR. I'm dealing with the kids, or I'm working on something at my desk, so I keep missing the menu prompts. You know how this goes. This happened to me just a couple of weeks ago with my preferred airline. I was traveling for work and I wanted to change my return flight. I started in the app. I couldn't make the changes I needed, so I hit contact us. I was kicked out of the application, into my phone's dialer, and into the IVR. Now, I pulled the app back up while I was waiting, so I'd have my confirmation number ready. But before connecting, I was forced back to the dialer because they wanted me to press 1 for yes or 2 for no to let them know whether I'd be willing to provide feedback after the interaction was done. Then once I was finally connected, I started over and I explained the entire issue to the agent, who then authenticated me by asking me my favorite pizza topping and my least favorite fruit or vegetable as a child before finally getting my flight changed. This is a fundamentally broken, outdated, and comically bad experience. It threatens my loyalty to you as a customer, and it puts your agents in a terrible position from the start if I can ever actually connect to someone. And it ultimately costs you more time, energy, and resources than should be required to just take my money and give the customer what they want, right? That's channel switching. And it's the necessary evil that we still take for granted and just live with. And it's the pain point that Omnichannel was built and marketed to solve for. But there's absolutely no good reason in this day and age, with the technologies that are available to us, for why we're still doing this to our customers and to each other. We've been drinking the Omnichannel Kool-Aid for 10 years now. And the people talking about it are the same ones who told us that we were all doing the right things, and that if we just kept adding enough channels, we could meet the customer where they were, and our customer experiences would be great. So how's that going for us? Look, there's a quote from Einstein that I'm sure you've all heard in some form or fashion. He said something like, "We cannot solve our problems with the same mindset that created them." Consumers have evolved, and we must as well. We live in a world of digital voice and smart devices that can blend these channels and eliminate channel switching altogether. So why simply try to minimize the pain of channel switching when we can eliminate the problem entirely? So where's this all left us? These are the most common challenges that we hear when companies come to UJET for help. Now, some of these companies are decades-old financial institutions that stood up their call centers 30 years ago. And some of these companies are the newer digital disruptors that you never heard of before the last 5 to 10 years that are now making, the Forbes 50. But what they all have in common when they come to us is that they've been doing the right things, right? When it comes to providing omni-channel customer service and meeting their customers where they are. But they all still have these challenges: consistent CX across departments, lines of business, and regions, weak self-service offerings that frustrate customers more than they help, inability to tap into and leverage the native capabilities of the smart device their customers are all using. Does any of this sound familiar? Right? And then things like effortless resolution and CX as a growth engine are just pie in the sky. So what's wrong with this picture? Right? Were they really doing all the right things in the first place? Or were they doing the things that they were told would work by companies trying to extend the shelf life of their software 20 years past its prime? So what we have to do here is we have to overcome our own organizational design and the complexity that we've created with all of this channel stacking, because it's creating a ton of frustration and friction for our customers. And it's really why we have such a hard time putting the customers first. This is one of those well-intentioned things that's just gone wrong. We study consumer preferences. We see that digital adoption or social channels are on the rise. So we go figure out who can support those channels, and we add that tool in the next one, and so on. And we end up with these insanely complex customer journey maps. But if you just take a step back and look at what your customers are trying to achieve through their journey, you can really boil it down to 3 simple phases. They need to connect with a resource, align with that resource to develop a mutual understanding of the issue, and then resolve that issue. That's it. But what we've been seeing is that so many teams have mistakenly focused far too many resources on the final mile, on resolution. But 95% of that frustration comes from those first two phases, connecting and aligning. Because we have all of these different channels that don't talk to each other. So our customers keep switching channels and starting over, and we're back in that loop. So this is where you can start to take a fundamentally different and more modern approach to this problem. Now, if you don't take anything else away from what I say here today, please remember this. Mobile is not a channel. It's an entirely new modality that can blend and enhance all of your existing channels. So let's take a look at some of the steps you'll have to take to get there. First, we've all seen headlines claiming that, data is the new oil. And the result is that we have too many systems and vendors fighting for control of your data and your customers' data. But this does nothing to better serve you or your customers. Because anytime you're relying on multiple systems of record, like your contact center and your CRM, there are going to be redundancies, latency, and breaks in the data that make it incredibly difficult to use that data effectively. So we need to maintain the data's integrity. We need to secure it. And we need to be able to combine historical data with real-time data, metadata, and context to inform routing and resolution. But 9 times out of 10, what we see are companies just struggling to reconcile historical data across multiple systems or resource pools to report on the same old list of metrics we've been talking about for 20 years. But instead, if you can eliminate storage of personally identifiable information in the contact center altogether, and instead read and write all of your interaction data to and from your existing system of record, the CRM or the ERP, you'll gain incredible agility. Not only in the ability to combine historical data and real-time context to predict customer intent and inform routing, but in unifying the customer record across sales, marketing, and support to get past those departmental silos and gain a truly holistic view of the customer experience. This also eliminates a significant portion of the effort and complexity associated with security and compliance that we have to deal with, since you can now focus on a single global system. Then next, this is what we've been talking about today. The smartphone is how we all communicate with friends and family, from calls to texting to videos, and it's all fluid. This is how my 2-year-old interacts with his 70-year-old grandmother. But contact centers are still overwhelmingly using workflows and systems that were designed for the desktop and landline phone. Just like when I got kicked out of the app and into my phone's dialer in the IVR with the airline. But if you initiate that call within the app or web experience, we'll not only preserve all of the context because the interaction is actually continuous, but we can enhance and augment our view of the customer issue. So for example, we can easily see which pages or tabs the customer was working on when they got stuck. We could pull in GPS coordinates for roadside assistance. We can also tap into the device's biometric capabilities to expedite authentication via Face ID or fingerprint. And we can provide all of the context to the agent in real time while triggering knowledge-based articles or next best offers and scripts to better assist them. And then once connected, or even while the customer's on hold, we can directly request media like photos, video, or screenshots and automatically append them to the record for better communication and faster resolution. This is how we all use our phones with friends and family. It's totally natural for us in our personal lives. The fact that it's missing from our customer service interactions is why so many of them continue to feel so unnatural today. And then this is where you can really start to pull away from the pack. Practical, methodical, use case specific applications of intelligence and automation throughout your workflows. There's so much marketing hype and buzz around AI right now that we're already starting to see pushback from CX leaders who either think that it won't work or they just don't know where to start. But AI absolutely can change the game for CX practitioners if it's broken down into practical applications across natural language, sentiment detection, robot process automation, or what we call RPA, machine learning, and so forth. And it has to be leveraged throughout the entire platform, not just bolted onto the front end of your customer journey in an attempt to deflect customers. Maybe you want to bypass a virtual agent for chat and route straight to a live agent based on the customer status or the severity of the issue. Or maybe you want to serve up a specialized virtual agent for specific tasks with multiple steps, like beginning a claim, changing appointments, or processing a return. Or trigger automatic escalation to a live agent based on real-time sentiment analysis. But you can only do this if you first unified the customer data and then leverage that smart device so that you can be more predictive, selective, and personalized in how and when you orchestrate channel steering and call deflection, so that you achieve higher operational efficiency without sacrificing the actual customer experience. And so this is what it looks like if we put it all together. We're really honestly already in the third wave of cloud contact center innovation, right? So where we've seen success in really delivering more adaptive, transformative CX is with two types of companies. Those newer digital brands in industries like rideshare, single-use rentals, and on-demand retail, who really only just started in the last 5 years or so with a clean slate and next-gen tools, or from those more established companies that have said, enough is enough. They've circled the wagons and they've started over from square one to really examine their customer preferences and then look at their processes and tools together to really redesign and retool from the ground up. And what they've done is embed and maintain the experience entirely within the customer's single preferred mode, their smart device, their smartphone. So the user can start via digital. We can steer them to the right channels based on their status or their historical record or the issue in real time. We can determine whether to engage with a virtual agent or if it's best to bypass this step and go straight to a live agent with predicted intent and intelligent personalized routing. We can leverage multi-factor authentication through the phone and the application. We can also easily use the phone's inherent capabilities to share media for visual context, to reduce hold time and the perception of dead air by using it to collect media and information, and then ultimately resolve issues more efficiently and more naturally for both your customers and your agents. So that's it. If you really want to create a truly customer-first organization, then you have to be willing to interrupt your organization's thinking about departmental goals and constructs and the way you've always done business. We went far too long with all of the software investment and innovation focused on acquiring customers for sales and marketing, with very little emphasis on customer service because we were just seen as cost centers. But we're in an inflection point now where that lack of investment has caught up with business leaders. So our heroes on the front lines of customer service are finally starting to receive the support they need to truly take care of their customers. So you're seeing massive demand and migration, not just from on-prem to cloud, but from those first and second gen cloud providers to more modern digital first solutions as well. And we're very excited to be a part of that movement. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope you have a wonderful summit. Cheers.
Great. Well, thanks very much for that, Baker, and Ash, on behalf of Baker, welcome to the stage. So Baker makes a very compelling case there, I think, that our historically siloed, channeled mode of trying to think about customer service and the customer experience has needed to change, is changing, but the full realized essence of that vision is probably most wholly achievable through a mobile platform. That it's, and what he's making the case for is it's not just another channel to add in the mix, although it could be thought of as that. Its full potential is if the customer experience is designed and built around the richness, the personalizableness, if there is such a word, of the smartphone experience, and that bringing it all together, the full potential of the deepest, best customer experience could be experienced through that. And most people have it. And it brings to mind very much some of the work that's being done in China at the moment around things like WeChat, where arguably they've gone even further than we have in terms of their use of, in this case, a platform that enables people to You can order it. It will come on a be delivered to you by robots. You can eat it. You can pay for it. You can rate it. Like the WeChat has everything you need to do built, the features of it built into, and then organizations have built their services into it through APIs, so it can act as that universal customer experience engine. And I think what Baker's saying is we can think in those terms about how we might bring to bear the best possible customer experience here, and to really think about that mobile as the central platform. Am I right in the vision he's outlining?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think I think you make a great point with regards to the work that WeChat does and how intrinsic that's become in certainly China and the wider Asian culture as well. And I think what's really interesting from a personal standpoint, and perhaps I can say this now that Baker's not here, but perhaps it's a generational thing. But for me personally, it's astounding from a consumer's standpoint that it has taken us this long to understand that actually, as consumers and as customers, the first thing we reach for is our mobile phone. If you cast your mind back to the timeline that Baker was showing us at the beginning of that talk, the thing that leapt out to me when I first joined UJET was that actually all of these innovations up to when UJET began bringing mobile as a modality to the market, all of those different bullet points were actually benefiting the company or the service provider in that example, the airline that Baker alluded to there. Really all of those advancements in technology actually helped the business. They didn't help the end user whatsoever. And it's one of those interesting things whereby, I see it time and time again with, the amount of RFPs and RFIs that come across our desk here. The first thing that they ask is how many different omnichannel channels can you cover, right? And what immediately, because they list so many, you sit there and you think, you've clearly never asked your customer what are their top 3 preferred channels, because I could almost guarantee that they would name 3 things that they access immediately from their mobile. I would be amazed if anybody put email in that top 3, for example, because we all know it takes longer and it's also more difficult to get to. It's a sort of clunky experience, email. But what's overriding for me is that really, I think omnichannel was is a successful thought process. It's a good idea to think about how many different channels can we ingest data in through. But as I guess as a sort of flagpole to stand next to and beat your chest, it's a false premise. Really what we should be looking at is how do people interact with us, not how many ways can we offer them to interact with us. And ultimately, that all comes down to mobile. And if you can look at your last couple of experiences that you'd have had, the reason that the majority of experiences are slowed down is because the agent doesn't have the data, right? Now, not only is that a stressful experience for the agent, imagine being that poor agent sweating that your flight's taking off, they can't help you with your boarding pass, whatever sort of information that they require. It's also a stressful and a negative experience for you. And again, the sort of overwhelming roundabout that we keep going around here is that where is all that data? Well, it's on your mobile phone. How can we confirm that you are who you say you are? Well, we can do that via your mobile phone as well. How can we reflect the issues that you're having with a company's application on your mobile? Well, that we can do on your mobile. What about website errors? Yeah, mobile too. The list goes on. Right down to we have some fantastic success stories with IoT companies who you can well imagine. You call up the IoT company and you describe a problem to them, and they sort of say, "Oh, well, have you looked at our latest FAQs and have you done this, that, and the other?" Instead of, "Hey, can you send me a picture of the problem? Send me a picture of the product. What's happening right now?" That's the sort of data that we can provide via mobile, and you can't provide via any other channel, if you're not on a mobile. So, as Baker alluded to, mobile is the modality. As for channels, they all go through mobile anyway.
Yeah, and the sheer richness of what could be done on a mobile, and the quality and value you could deliver in terms of a customer experience is so tremendously more rich through all the reasons you said, like the security, the location, the personalization. These are things that are hard to do through any other modality, and therefore the consequences, the customer experience is going to be less. The potential awkwardness for the customer and the cost for the organization of trying to deal with these legacy channels is a burden on both sides. And it makes me think about whether, we talk about customer preference, whether we need to kind of re-examine that little bit on the basis that customers' preference will tend to be what they've used to do before. It's their historical relationship or experiences will shape what they think is important. That famous quote from Henry Ford: "If I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said we wanted a faster horse." So, because one of the things that brings to mind is some work being done on behavioral change, and certainly the nudge theory, which we even had a department here in the UK on a nudge department, or behavior change department, as they like to be known as, showed that when you introduce a new service, you could say, well, what's your preference for contact? And certainly for a lot of public services, people say, oh, telephone call, email, letters, and mobile and more advanced ways of contacting these institutions would often contribute quite a small proportion. And then it was like, oh shit, we've got to keep running all these letters and running all these channels. But what they found is that if people were going to use a public service and they presented mobile or digital as the default setting, not to say the others don't exist, but presented it as the default way, that this is how we propose to deal with you, most people go with the default. So you can get channel shift, not by forcing anyone, but just presenting the default as something like mobile. And it just feels like maybe we need to get smarter at thinking about how to effect more efficient or a greater adoption of that mobile modality by, when people sign up for a new service or sign up for the company, to present that as the default setting. And that might help accelerate us towards this vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting, and it's a great quote you brought up there, the Henry Ford quote with regards to a faster horse. I've got a Great Dane, so I can attest to having a fast horse, believe me. But the interesting part there is that I think we're at a point whereby organizations can actually quite easily merge what I will refer to as the legacy generation of reaching for the phone first, but to make a phone call, versus this younger generation, and thankfully I'm not part of it, but the TikTok generation and everything like that. They immediately want to open an app. They want to tap away, put it down, make a TikTok video, whatever they do, and come back to it and have their problem solved. And the two common, or the piece of common ground there when it comes to a company providing their customer service, is that both reach for their phone. It's the same. And if we're able to actually not only provide both with the same option, the same modality to contact us, we can actually provide them both with a more enhanced service. And the example there that I would give is that, if someone of Baker's generation, again, I'll use that as he's not here, if someone of Baker's generation was to call the airline and reach out and have issues, and they needed to verify themselves, they could do so with our platform whilst on the phone, simply use Face ID or biometrics, and continue what they are used to, their comfort zone, continue down that journey as they would expect. And then on the flip side, we can still accommodate for that TikTok generation, whereby they may want to text in, et cetera, and then if they need to upload photos or change that into a phone call, we can do the same. But the core of that is that at no point does either customer on that journey have to leave the app. And if you were to go to UX designers or people that are specializing in behavior around trying to maintain the attention of your customer inside the app to increase sales, ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're increasing brand loyalty because there is no danger, and we've all done it. I could do it now. We've all ordered something on Deliveroo, you notice that that restaurant isn't serviced on Deliveroo. You know, they all split across various different apps. And then you go to look for burger in London on Google, and before you know it, you know, we all know how we're marketed to. Uber Eats will be the first advertised spot, and you could very quickly have left your journey with Deliveroo and ended up with Uber Eats or whoever else it may be. The risk of that happening is real, and that's something that we're really recognizing when we speak to organizations. And it's quite interesting. It's a double take when we say, hey, we can do all of this, and they never leave the app. And they, well, wait a second, how do they make the phone call? Oh, well, that's all embedded in the app. And it's that's what I mean. The convergence of the two generations being able to walk the same journey, but with their own preferences. It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned Uber. It's come up a couple of times today. Someone was explaining to me that one of the killer features of Uber, which is a bit of psychology, which is like, you know, ordering a cab is fine. Cab's going to be 10, 15 minutes or whatever. But the ability to see where the cab is helps people manage their expectations. Like, when is it coming? Is it coming now? Where is it? Is it going to be 1 minute? Is it going to be 2 minutes? To be able to see it coming along was a comfort to people that made visually and the whole experience of Uber so much more delightful than ordering a cab or anywhere else. And this ability to see where things are and what's happening in real time. It just struck me there's something quite interesting about that concept that could be applied to many other customer experience challenges of ordering things or wanting to know where you are in a queue or whatever it is that might be, that where the ability to see it and where I am could be extremely comforting, which is an incredible feature, I think, of the mobile as a modality. Right, we've got a question coming in from Mustafa. So far, we've talked about the importance of mobile-first approach, but what do you think about the impact of smart wearables and IoT and new future when it comes to experience? And this is a super interesting question because I'm doing a lot of work in health, and wearables and health technology is increasingly generating information and data. There'll be new sources of data that arise that won't necessarily just come from the phone. But I think, you know, I'm thinking as I'm speaking, Ash, you may well say, well, this is just reinforcing the mobile modality of bringing that data together and surfacing and making it visible, no matter where it's coming from and what sensors might be involved in the experience.
Yeah, look, I think, firstly, that's a fantastic question, Mustafa. I think it's important that we think about what's in the future as opposed to just celebrating what we have. You know, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we've had mobile a long time. So, you know, whilst I'm very proud that UJet have taken to the forefront of going mobile first, quite frankly, we should have figured that out a long time ago. So it's important that we think about wearables and IoT and what does the future bring. For me, wearables is the more interesting subject, but sadly one that I'm not an expert in. So let me take the IoT bit first. What's interesting about IoT is that we can actually use that to predict, you know, various different outages, customer service requirements, and you know, so on and so forth. And we do a relatively good job of that already today. I was actually recently involved in a project here at UJet whereby we worked with I can't name them, so a leading coffee manufacturer and outlet, let's call them, or a coffee retailer, whatever phrase you'd like to use with it. And they have various, you know, coffee kiosks that they're able to use in fuel stations and corner shops, etc. And something that they found they were wasting a lot of time on was around the fact that they didn't know whether a machine would need a service 2,000 coffees in or 10 coffees in. You know, they didn't quite have a handle of what that information was. What they could do is use the IoT device that was in that machine to help them understand stock levels. So what we actually did is via a sort of collaborative piece of work with them is that we not only did we help them to understand stock levels versus durability of their devices, but also how can we then optimize the amount of time by getting that information back to the service team how can we optimize the time of their engineers that have to go out and actually visit on site? So that's more of an internal service sort of requirement. But we've also seen similar with leading manufacturers of dishwashers, washing machines, tumble dryers, etc. That if we're able to tap into their IoT devices that are attached to those machines, then very quickly we can actually reach out proactively for the customer and begin that interaction for them. And where that becomes really powerful, again, looking for a selfish side from a company standpoint, is that those manufacturers are not only are they able to reach out and provide a far more positive interaction, because they're the ones proactively reaching out and saying, Andrew, I think you've got trouble with your tumble dryer there. Give us a call if X, Y, and Z happens. But they're also able to be more proactive in their upselling and their positioning of new products, because they understand the condition of their existing products that they have from such a company. So for me, IoT is incredibly interesting. It can be both beneficial and also, when you think of yourself as a consumer, they'll find another way to take a pound from your wallet. But we've got to be responsible when it comes to the smart wearables piece. That's something that I think is really important. We don't want gyms calling us when we have our heart rate go above a certain limit, for example. So we've got to be careful with that data.
Exactly. Well, let's draw this to a close, because I think this conversation may well spill over into the Q&A we're just about to have. So let's call it a wrap on this session. Let's come back for the Q&A, and what I'll do is also wrap in my wrap up for the day into the Q&A. So hopefully we'll finish on time. So you'll be back in this, I'm assuming, Ash.
Certainly will.
Great. We'll see you back on stage in a couple of minutes then.
All right. Thanks.